Well, I am really, really pleased to say that on the Godcast today is ex-professional footballer, the one and only Andy Payton. Andy played 156 times for Burnley and he scored 81 goals and he scored over 230 goals in a really fantastic career. He's played for Celtic, he's played for Huddersfield, Middlesbrough, Hull, Blackpool and Barnsley. Andy was brought up Roman Catholic, and I'm really pleased to say that he's agreed to join us today to just have a chat about a few things, football and faith. So, Andy, how are you today?
I'm very good, thank you, Alex, and thanks for inviting us on, because I've seen a couple of the the interviews, especially the Derek Scott one, with the Burnley connection, and it's really good. I'm looking forward to it.
So where in the world are you today, Andy? Are you still in Burnley these days?
Yeah, I live in Worsthorne. I've got 3 daughters who have always lived with me. They're obviously getting older now. They're 23, 21 and 20. My youngest is due. So I'm going to be a granddad in about 4 or 5 weeks. The girls are, they've got their own lives now, etc. But so I'm living in Worsthorne. I work down at Burnley College. I'm a football coach. I do a lot of coaching with kids every night. Prior to lockdown, unfortunately, everything's had to stop. But in a really good place and enjoying life. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go back to the beginning of the journey, Andy. When you were a young lad playing football, who were your kind of early day heroes as a boy?
Well, I was brought up in Burnley. I went to school in Padiham. Well, I was actually brought up in Padiham. I went to Padiham St John's and Gawthorpe, and I was a massive Burnley fan. So I used to go on Turf Moor, week in, week out. And looking back at the time, I think, Billy Hamilton, Peter Noble, Frank Casper, Martin Dobson, the 70s era. Although I was obviously a young lad at that time, but they were my heroes and Burnley were my club, and I watched Burnley avidly. I was a Claret and Blue, like everyone around here is.
Yeah, and in terms of your ability, was that recognised quite early on? Were people making noises about you?
Not really. I got in the town team as a kid. 10, 11. I was very small growing up as a child. So, and I tell this to a lot of the kids that I coach, because I didn't get in the Lancashire team at 13. I went for trials. I got to the final trial, but I didn't get in. I signed for Burnley at 14 as a schoolboy. Nowadays they have academies where they're taking kids at 5, 6 and what have you. Back in the day, you had to be 14, but I signed for Burnley at 14. So I was good enough to sign for Burnley, as it were, but at 16 I got released and they took 10 lads on, and it was free. It was the YTS scheme. So
how was that, Andy? How did that affect you when you was released by the club that you love?
Really tough, really tough. I felt as though I should have been taken on, but I weren't overconfident, but they took 10 lads on and released me. So it was really tough, yeah. So what I did, there were no internet then. So I wrote I'd been for a trial at Hull City when I was 13, and I got offered something. I got offered to sign for Hull at 13, and I turned them down for Burnley. So I wrote to every club in the northwest of England, probably to about 25 clubs. So I wrote 25 individual letters out, and I got one reply off Hull City, who offered me a trial. And I went over to Hull for a week at 16, and they offered me a 1-year YTS, which was a government scheme, which was £25 a week. But what it meant were that I had to leave home at 16. And you're a kid, aren't you, at 16? But yeah, I took the opportunity and left home and went to Hull, and I was gutted, that Burnley had released me, But I think I used it a little bit to try, and the last thing I wanted to do to get released again, So I went to Hull at 16 and started my football career.
Yeah. Were you one of those guys at school that was good at everything? Andy, when I was at school, that we had a lad. You don't even know him. His name was Steve Manton. He was on Burnley's books for a while.
I know Steve. Yeah.
And he were a great footballer. We all thought he'd make it. He didn't quite make it. But were you good at sports day? Were you good at cricket and all that?
No, I was all right at running and football. Football was my thing. I just had a ball at my feet every, morning, noon, and night. But academically, average. I left school with no qualifications because I got offered the YTS at Hull, but I don't think I'd have got anything anyway. I might have got, I don't know, one GCSE or something like that. So no, not really. But I was always very sporty. But I remember Steve. He was a year below me, and he was a really good player. But I think he actually got signed on and then got released. And it can be really tough for the players that get released.
Yeah, Derek Scott described it as a conveyor belt. Some people get off it quite quickly, and some people make a full long career out of it, which is true, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is a conveyor belt. I was fortunate. When I say fortunate, I'd had the rejection. I played for 21 years. I played right up to 37. And it is a conveyor belt. One thing about football is no matter what you did last season, when the new season starts, it doesn't matter. You're back to, as a striker as well, you're back to no goals again.
Yeah.
So it's a constant pressure and a constant, a constant pressure. But what a great lifestyle. And what, once you, if you do make it, it's a brilliant lifestyle.
Yeah. Fantastic. And just touching on the faith stuff, I believe you're from a Roman Catholic family, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I went to Padiham St John's. I remember Holy Communion. I remember getting. I think we had a Holy Communion day because St John's was the church and the school was sort of linked and still are. So some of our lessons at junior school were actually going into church. And yeah, I've always had. I would say I've always had faith. Not massive. I'll be honest with you. Like I said before, my brother died a couple of years ago suddenly, and also my cousin who I was very close to died a few years ago, and I found faith a little bit hard, especially when somebody suddenly dies. But I've always sort of tried to believe in God and think that there is a God, and hopefully that whether it's a God or a higher power, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you like to think so.
When I interviewed Eamon Holmes a few weeks back, he described being a bit of a lapsed Catholic, but he did say once a Roman Catholic, always a Roman Catholic. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I think so. But I think you possibly get it instilled into you as a kid, as a child. But I think as you get older, you realise a lot of things. When you're doing the right things in life, you tend to follow that path. And I think Roman Catholic and how can I put it? Do you understand what I mean? That when you're living correctly and everything else, you tend to follow those sort of rules and live a peaceful, happy life.
Were your parents quite into church? Because most people of our generation kind of were quite regular, it'd be a regular.
Not really, no, I'll be honest with you. We didn't go to church. The option was there, but playing football, I found it a little bit boring. I think all kids, you understand what I mean when you're going in singing hymns and what have you. But no, not really. Although I think they've always sort of, kept that little bit of faith.
Yeah. So were your parents, were they Burnley people, your parents, Andy, or do you come in from somewhere else?
Yeah, no, my dad Burnley born and bred, and my mum from Padiham, and they've been married 54 years.
Yeah. Was there a sporting? Was your dad good at sport? Was he good at football or?
No, my dad weren't really into football. They were into doing up cars and back in the day, taking his dog out and stuff like that. So not really. No, they weren't. My granddad, I think, played football, not to a professional level, but no, not really. They weren't much within the family.
Yeah. All right. Well, just going back to the footy then. This trip to Hull, I suppose it must have been a bit of a lifeline for you, and you must have been absolutely made up to get that year. And I know people in Burnley kind of think, well, you just like it's Burnley through and through. But I would guess that Hull City's got a special place for you, has it?
Oh, massively. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Hull City did give me that lifeline. I went over there, and I remember the first training session. We got a new manager, a guy called Brian Horton, who went on to manage Man City, and it was his first job, so he was a player manager. They were also first and second year apprentices. So to create the dog eat dog lifestyle, I mean, the manager walked in the dressing room. There were 16 of us sat there. This was my very first day. He said, take a look around. He said, there's 16 in here. He said, I'm going to keep 4, and walked out. So straight away created that atmosphere. So although it was great times, but the apprentices were all vying against each other, even though they were your mates. You know, ultimately at the end of every 12 months, the club looked at it again. You either got taken on or you got released.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how they create the atmosphere, because when if you do make it into first team, you've got the crowd to put up with. You know what I mean, and the pressure, and that's what it was like at Hull. But Hull definitely became my club. Because
was he true to his word? Did he take 4, or did he take more or less?
No, he's true to his word. I'll be honest with you, the group of apprentices we had at that time, 7 of us got in the first team, and Hull were championship level. You know, he was a good manager and a good coach, but we had a good group. But it was unbelievably dog eat dog, you know, all the way through. The pressure was on. You know, even when you made it, like I say, I remember making my debut for Hull at 19. So I got released from Burnley at 16. 3 years later, I made my debut in the Championship for Hull against Leeds United. I was fortunate enough to score, and we won, but there were 18,000 on. So straight away, after my first game, it was the manager, what he did, he actually got some of the senior players to start calling me Billy Big Time, just to bring me right back down to earth. Right. So that's how it was. But I'd improved that much in the 3 years training every single day, that I think people back in Burnley who'd seen the lad who got released were probably thinking, like, you know, how's he playing in the Championship now? Yeah. But I'd grown as well. Yeah. Not massive amount, you know, 5'10" when I played, but and that's being kind. I think I was 5'9", 5'10". But yeah, I'd learned the game a little bit.
Yeah. And then we haven't got ages, so it's going to be a bit of a whistle stop. But Celtic, I mean, when Celtic come in for you, which is undoubtedly one of the biggest clubs in Europe. I talked to Derek Scott about when Celtic came down and played Burnley in the Anglo-Scottish Cup. I'll never forget that day. But you know, particularly with the Catholic link as well, when Celtic came in, you must have been absolutely buzzing.
Well, I'll be honest with you. What had happened were I broke into the first team at 19 at Hull. So in my first season in the Championship, I got 18 goals. But I've been scoring regularly in the reserves. We actually won the reserve league. So my natural progression into the first team. So then the second season, we finished bottom of the Championship, but I got 25 league goals. And I was only 21 years old. So a lot of clubs, had started looking at me. Celtic being one of them. I ended up going to Middlesbrough. Hull got relegated. Middlesbrough came in with a record fee. So I went to Middlesbrough with their record signing. So I'd scored 57 goals for Hull in the first team before you know, a lot of interest were coming off a lot of clubs.
Yeah.
Middlesbrough got promotion.
Andy, who was the gaffer at Middlesbrough at that time?
Lenny Lawrence. We got promotion to the Premier League. And that summer, so I'd only been there 9 months, Celtic came back in for me. And Liam Brady. And you don't turn a club like Celtic down. I went up there for talks. They get 60,000 crowds. The changing room were full of internationals. So, one of the Old Firm games, I managed to score the winner in the Old Firm. Trevor Stephen, who's one of my heroes at Burnley. Yeah. I got his autograph at 14 years old down on Gawthorpe Lane. And he was stood next to me. And I got the winner. And I felt like tapping him on the shoulder and saying, you know, can you remember me? Because I got your autograph down Gawthorpe at 14, but obviously I didn't. But no, massive club. And I managed to score 20 goals for him in 46 games and
Andy,
did well.
Andy, you do realise, mate, don't you, that you just talked about your adulation for Trevor Stephen, but lots of kids, you were their Trevor Stephen. What's that like?
It's fantastic. I mean, getting that adulation off the kids. When I came back to Burnley, and I managed to score 81 goals, and we got a promotion. I won the Golden Boot, and I'm not giving it the big, and I'm just saying the facts. But I think one of the biggest things for me was when the club put my picture on the outside of the ground. Because a lot of kids see that. And the Golden Boots in the trophy cabinet, so the kids see that, and it's fantastic. It's a good feeling.
Yeah. And what was it like up at Celtic? I mean, to us in Burnley, Burnley's the greatest club ever, but you know, we realise we realise where we are. But I guess hundreds of kids must have come to see you train up at Celtic or Town.
Oh, you'd have 1,000 people watching you train. I mean, the sectarian. I were Catholic, but I mean, they'd already started signing Protestant players or whatever. I mean, I think just prior to me, if you weren't Catholic, you wouldn't play for Celtic. But just a massive club. I mean, we played in Europe, played at Dortmund, played at Colne. We came second to a really good Rangers team. And the manager ultimately lost his job. But the club itself is huge, unbelievable. 60,000 home games. Just
touch on that sectarianism a little bit, Andy. Did you feel it when you were up there? Was it like, you're not allowed to big up Rangers in any way? What was it like?
Well, it was pure hatred. We talk about Burnley and Blackburn, which is massive rivalry, but up there, I mean, different level, absolute different level. I don't agree with it, obviously, but I mean, I came from Burnley, so I wasn't involved in, we'd have Irish internationals. Padiham, the goalkeeper, is an example. So on the way to the game, they were playing all these Irish, I don't know what they call folk songs or whatever. Yeah. For me, it didn't really mean anything to me. That playing for Celtic mattered, but up there it was huge, and a real hatred between the two fans, which is not good. I don't like to see that, but I think it still carries on today, I just looked at it, they were playing football and nothing else, Yeah.
I think that's a good place to be. I mean, I've not always been a vicar, and I've followed Burnley most of my life. And I have to say, I've been to Ewood and to St Rovers at Burnley. It makes me really uncomfortable because it is quite tribal, isn't it? And it's quite intimidating and frightening, and it doesn't completely make sense to me. So I try and focus on the game, but I can't imagine what it must have been like up there.
Well, it was intense. It was the only game I've ever played in where you couldn't hear your teammates on the pitch. Yeah. The noise was that loud. But the intensity before and after the game in the media was just frightening, really. Yeah. But it's all part of the game. To have that experience makes you a better player.
When you've got a game like that coming up, when you're playing Rangers on Saturday, I suppose there's an element in an elite football about, I long time ago, I was looking to be a stand-up comedian, and I got myself so pumped up. I was so full of adrenaline. When I got on the stage, I was a complete disaster. So I suppose there's an element of self-control in what you're doing there, is there, in a run up to a big match?
Well, I mean, the build-up in the press is a week before. It's all about the old firm up there, obviously. I mean, without the two, you take Celtic and Rangers out of Scottish football, and it probably wouldn't really. It still exists, but I mean, it's all about Celtic Rangers. But you've got to deal as a player with the pressure, because night before an old firm game, you can't think about anything else. No. And then also, depending on what the result was, the aftermath of either you've done brilliant, you've won, or you've lost and it's a disaster, and you've got to cope with that, But that's all part of being a footballer, and you've got to get used to it.
Yeah. And whilst you're on this journey, you're playing for Barnsley, for Hull and Borough, and then Celtic. Was it always your intention that one day you'd actually put the claret and blue shirt on at Turf Moor?
I'd always wanted to play for Burnley. Having been rejected at 16, I'll be honest with you, I thought, well, they don't want me. So, and also, the rejection, you feel as though it's never going to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen. The only reason I went to Barnsley is because Liam Brady got sacked. And I just thought they were in the Championship. They came in for me. I'd not played. I was back in the reserves. Lou McCorry came in, and even though I'd finished top scorer, he didn't fancy me. So when I came back down to England, back in the Championship at Barnsley, it's unbelievable, really. So the first game I ever played at Turf Moor, even as a kid, because the school I played for, we never got to any of the finals or anything, so I never played on Turf Moor, was for Barnsley. And it was the year that Burnley went up in '94. So there were 18,000 on it, the third home game. And Barnsley won 1-0 and I scored.
Yeah.
So my first ever exam, playing on Turf Moor was for Barnsley, but I didn't celebrate. I walked back.
Yeah.
Out of respect for the club a little bit. But I never thought I'd play for Burnley. No, I just didn't think it was ever going to happen.
So just tell us how it came about. What happened to get you to Turf?
Well, I was at Barnsley for 2 years. I did well. I scored 47 goals in the Championship. The reason why I know how many goals I scored is because I was a striker, and I feel as though any striker's got to know how many goals he scored. It's your job. So it's not, you just know the facts. And any striker that tells you don't know how many goals he scored, I don't get that at all. We got targets 20 goals a season, so it's part of my DNA in football. Anyway, so I've had 2 years at Barnsley. Huddersfield came in for me. Brian Horton, who signed me at Hull, was Huddersfield manager. So I had a year at Huddersfield in the Championship. Burnley were struggling in the league below. I got 20 goals in the Championship that season. And I got a hernia operation in the summer. I was out for 3 months. The manager, Brian Horton, got sacked. A new man came in, a guy called Peter Jackson, who I'd fell out with a few times when I played against him. We were a big centre-half and we'd always have run-ins.
He went to Huddersfield, didn't he?
He got the Huddersfield job. Yeah. And when he got the job, he didn't want me. Just because of run-ins we'd had in the past, it was weird. And I got a phone call. I'd been out for 3 months and I played a reserve game. And when I got home, it was January. Burnley were bottom at league below. He rang me up. He said, Chris Waddle wants to ring you. He said, Burnley have come in for you. So I was like looking at the league table thinking like, of course I want to sign for Burnley, but they played 28 games. It was in January and they were bottom at league below. So what do I do? It was dilemma time. Chris Waddle rang me, said, we really want to sign you. We need to get some goals. We've got to try and stay up. And it took 24 hours thinking about it, just because I thought of my career and everything else. But it was Burnley Football Club and I couldn't turn them down. And I signed. And we beat Southend at home 1-0. I managed to score on my debut, the home debut, and we were still bottom of the league. And we stayed up that season. That was the season we stayed up. But once I put the claret and blue shirt on, I'd fulfilled. Yeah. I'd had the Celtic. I played in Europe. I'd already scored over 100 goals in my career, but I wanted to play for Burnley. So it sort of took me back to that kid that had all the strips at Padiham St John's.
I love that you played for them but putting on the claret and blue. There's a couple of things there, Andy, if I can just pursue. One was you fall out with Peter Jackson. What were you like to be managed? Were you a good lad or were you a bit vocal?
No, I thought it was okay, really. I mean, we always have massive characters within every dressing room. It was banned, so you had to take it. I mean, the lads would just destroy you for anything, But no, I mean, my job was to score goals, and I got that drummed into me at an early age. I mean, we could. It's a funny one for strikers because we could go away from home and win 1-0. I could score. The defence could have played absolutely unbelievable. I could have got a tap-in and get the headlines. But it weren't my fault that I get the headlines, if you know what I mean. So it's always tough being a striker, I think. Because ultimately as well, you've got to get the goals. But no, I think I was good to manage. I worked hard. I loved the game. And I think the fact that I played till I was nearly 37 sums that up.
Yeah. And I mean, I know Burnley fans all Burnley fans know that Chris Waddle was our manager, but a lot of people outside of the club might think, crikey, Chris Waddle, they remember him as a absolutely fantastic footballer who played loads of times for England. But he came into Burnley, and generally, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the feeling was a bit of an unmitigated disaster. What's your view?
I think what happened with Chris, I think he'd been that used to playing at the absolute elite, you know, the top teams, that when he came in to manage Burnley, I'll give you an example. So my first game at home, we won. He gave us Monday off. We came in on Tuesday and had a five-a-side. We were still bottom of the league. He gave us Wednesday off. And that's how it were. There were too many days off, and the players he got weren't good enough. And I think he'd just been used to dealing and being around the top international players. So
he was a brilliant footballer, weren't he? He was a superb footballer.
Incredible. I mean, you look at his career, his caps, he played for Marseille. Incredible player. And I'll be honest with you, he played for Burnley in a few of those games at the end when we stayed up, and he was quality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think an elite footballer, found it hard coaching players that weren't as good as him.
Yeah.
Great guy.
As an elite footballer, and as all footballers, you know, age doesn't stop, does it? Time keeps moving on, and I suppose as you're going through the game and you're getting older, you're getting 35, 36, you must have known that the end of the career was on the horizon. And I just want to ask you, what's it like going through that? You know, you've lived the schoolboy dream, you've played for some fantastic football clubs, and you just know it's coming into a close. Was that tough for you, I guess?
It was tough because 1 minute I'll give you an example. So when we got promotion and I won the Golden Boot, I was 32. At 36, it was over. I was 37 in the October. My career was over. Burnley, as a club, like all clubs do, sign new players. So the competition never stops. You know, we signed likes of Robbie Blake, Gareth Taylor, Ian Moore. They're good players, you know. But you've got to realise in your head that it's coming to an end, and it's really difficult. In life terms, 36, 37 is not old. I wish I was 36 now. But in football terms, it's over. And it's so hard to take because it is over as well. You look at them, if you looked at a survey or whatever, or you counted how many players are playing now at 37 upwards, you're probably looking at what, under 10? If that, they might be under 5, I don't know. So mentally, you've got to prepare yourself for it, and it's really tough. Obviously, I struggled massively. I think if I could have spoken to me now, the Andy Payton that you're speaking to now, or the Andy Payton for the last 8 years, could have spoke to the Andy Payton at 37, I'd have listened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough.
Because it was very well documented, and I don't know the full story, but Burnley's a small place, and people talk and people say this and this, that, the other, and I don't think it's ever really been out there in the public domain, and it's a private matter, and I don't expect you to unravel every single thing, but it is well documented that after football, your life went through a bit of a turmoil. And well, just reflect briefly on that for us.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of it for me, your identity changes and your purpose in life. So when I stopped playing football, don't forget I'd done it every day for 21 years. I got up, I went training, I had all the lads there, I had the camaraderie, I had a job, I had a purpose in life. And when you stop playing, that changes, because everybody's perception of the Andy Payton that they know changes. You can't do it anymore. So I ended up with a drink problem. I'd started going out in the town and drowning my sorrows and everything else, and it became a problem. And probably for 5 years, you know, from 37 to 42, I was struggling massively. I was also a gambler, you know, which was every club I played for, all the lads had a gamble and all that. So I'd end up most days in the bookies, in the pub, and it's just a spiral downhill. And that's what happened.
Andy, can I ask you? You know, in all intents and purposes, you've gone from a hero to a bit of a villain, haven't you? What did that? Were you aware of that? You know, was that part of the problem? You might be perceived by other people.
Well, I think when you're drinking, like now, it's really my reputation and my, how people perceive me is really, really important. I work down at the college and I want people to show me, respect. You've got to gain that respect. What I did, because I'm from Burnley, I mixed with the lads and I go out with the lads and end up being one of the lads, and you just can't do it, But I've had 8 years, it was 8 years ago, 8 years ago. So I feel as though I've turned everything around. But the biggest thing for me were when I came out of football, I did not know what to do with my life. I had no idea.
No. Andy, have you knocked your mic at all? The sound's just dropped out a bit. Have you knocked your microphone at all?
I don't think so. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. Yes. Carry on. Sorry. Yeah. So you have been 8 years clean, you said. So that must be. Can you just talk about, because I deal with I come into contact with a lot of people who are actually living addiction at the moment and they're struggling now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm currently in the process of doing a book talking about this, not about my career, a little bit about my career, one chapter say, but the rest about recovery. I didn't go through AA, but I hit rock bottom. My rock bottom was where I felt as though I just lost everything, everyone's respect. I'd been done for drink driving. Everything fell apart for me, and it was all through, everyone's reputation. My reputation in Burnley had just gone downhill. I was just probably known as a drunk, which I didn't enjoy, obviously, and I wanted to pick myself up from that, And when you do it rock bottom, you either go one of two ways. You either want to change, and the change what I needed to make was to stop drinking and stop gambling. And also socially, there's drugs out there which you all know about, and I was doing that. I know it's a massive problem in not just in Burnley but in a lot of towns.
How was the football fraternity with you, Andy? Did they abandon you, or was there people who threw their arms around you?
No, you don't hear anything from the club or from the PFA. I know there's a lot more help nowadays, but back then, no, you didn't want to go and. There was no help. Once that door shuts from Burnley Football Club or whatever club, that's it. It's over. And a lot of players find that. And let's be honest, a lot of players, 3 of the lads that I was an apprentice with at Hull ended up in rehab. I never went to rehab. I was fortunate. Well, when I say fortunate, my rock bottom was losing everything. I'd paid for a house when I finished playing football. I lost that, through probably gambling and one thing and another. Like I say, I've got this book coming out which will sort of talk about that, but also talk about that you can change your life around. And I really have, through stopping doing those things. But no, there's no help from the club or anything. They weren't there.
I try to be a straight talker, but I know those problems have been awful, but I still think that people of Burnley love you. They still want the best for you. And I just want to use your voice for people out there, because there's a lot of folk in Burnley with this addiction problem. It's not unique to superstars and footballers. What would you say to somebody now who might watch this and just think, God, there's Andy Payton, he's been through that. What would you say to somebody who's in it now?
Yeah, well, I've put things on social media about people, get in touch with me and try and have a chat. You got to talk to people, you need to let people know what's happening. But ultimately, it's got to come from you. You've got to be the one person who wants to stop. Seek help if you can. Like I say, fortunately or unfortunately or whatever, I didn't go through AA. But my rock bottom was that low. I ended up with nothing. And that was, when I say nothing, like I say, it's going to be documented in the book I've got coming out. But you've got to want it so badly that you stay away. You might have to change your circle. If you've been going to the pub on a regular basis, you can't do it. No. If you want to stop drinking, you're not going to sit in the pub. If you want to stop reading, don't go in the library. Yeah. I don't know, things like that. Yeah. But you can stop and you can change your life around, and there is hope.
Well, you've come through it and you're doing some great stuff down at the college. I know my girlfriend's, my daughter's boyfriend is Cameron, who's a goalie down there, and he speaks highly of you. And and so this coaching, looking forward, I know you dabbled over at Garstang. Do you want to you got desire to get back into pro football, or?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it took me 5 years to do my coaching badges. So I've gone right through to UEFA licence. And all this is after 8 years ago. So I'm quite proud of the fact that I've done that. If I'd have stayed in, when I finished playing, I didn't want to be a coach. I was still a player in my head. So I had to come through that. You've got to have a bit of a change mentally. So it's not about you anymore. It's about coaching. I love coaching. I've got the qualifications behind me too. So like, if a job came at Burnley, a full-time job, I could apply for it because of the fact they've got my UEFA licence. So I'm really proud of that. It's something that I've done, and it takes a long time to get. The Garstang thing, they offered me the job. I went in there. It's really tough coaching players that are on £20 a week, because on a Friday night they're not stopping in. So it didn't last long, but I love coaching the kids. I coach kids every night.
I suppose that's a bit of a Chris Waddle kind of thing, isn't it? You need good players to coach, and
I mean, I'm not knocking anyone at that level, but I could still play at that level now.
Yeah,
that is a fact.
Yeah,
I won't get anything out of it at my age, but I could. But I just love coaching in general. I could go back into a different group of players and coach them. I've got the qualifications to prove that. But I like to say I love coaching the kids. They've still got dreams. They still want to be footballers, and I love it. Yeah, it's a big part of my life, and I've got that back. What I lost when I came out of football.
Yeah,
because I couldn't play anymore.
No.
But now I love coaching.
And just looking across the football horizon at the moment, Andy, which strikers are you absolutely think are absolutely top notch at the minute?
Well, you look at your Vardys and people like that. I mean, Vardy came from non-league. He had rejection like myself. He won the Golden Boot last season. He's got pace. I like Vardy. You look at Harry Kane. I managed to get over 200 goals, and I think any striker that, if you're looking at benchmarks for top strikers, a lot get over 100, but not a lot get over 200. No. Now, the absolute top ones, like the Alan Shearers, who got over 300, there's some fantastic players out there. But, Vardy stands out for me in the Premier League.
And our strikers aren't bad at Turf Moor, are they? They're pretty decent, aren't they?
Of course they are. Yeah, of course they are. I think Burnley being in the Premier League is fantastic. We're struggling at the moment, as everyone knows. Hopefully we can come through it. It's going to be a tough season because we've not really spent anything. If we do get injuries to key players, that's when the struggle will start.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course. I mean, Burnley in the Premier League is incredible.
Yeah.
And they've done really well.
Yeah. Andy, it's been really fabulous chatting to you. I admire your honesty. You remain, I said to you before the interview, you were absolutely a hero of my dad's, because you're known as the Padiham Predator. God blimey, you knew where the back of the net was, buddy, didn't you? You really did.
I'll tell you one thing, Alex. When I say this to the kids I coach, I work really hard. I put the practice in, day in, day out, and I improved. Because don't forget, like I said, at 16, I got told by the club that I love I weren't good enough. So, to turn it around and be, to have had a career there, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah. Andy, thanks so much for your time. I'm so glad you're well. You're looking well. And I know Burnley fans will watch this, and other clubs will be pleased to know you're doing well. And thanks so much for your time, and send our love to you from St Matthews. God bless.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Thanks a lot for the interview. Much appreciated.